The hot sun beat down on Mason Hayes as he dragged himself across the dry Nevada desert. His leg hurt with each move. The remains of his fighter jet smoked in the distance. What had started as a normal test flight had turned into a nightmare when his jet stopped working in midair. Now he was stuck in the middle of nowhere with a broken leg and almost no water. Mason checked his radio again. Nothing but static. The military base was too far away to reach his weak signal. He looked at his water bottle and saw only a few drops left. He had been walking for hours, but the desert seemed endless in all directions. As the sun began to set, the desert air grew cold. Mason shivered and pulled his torn flight jacket tighter. His military training had taught him how to survive in tough places, but even the best training couldn't help without water. The pain in his leg was getting worse. He knew the break was bad. Mason found a large rock and sat against it. He would rest for a while and then try to move during the cooler night. He looked up at the sky as stars began to appear. The night was clear, and the stars shone brightly without city lights to dim them. Mason wondered if anyone was looking for him yet. The test flight wasn't supposed to end for another hour. It might be morning before they realized he was missing. He stared at the stars. Something strange caught his eye. A pattern of lights moved across the sky in a way that didn't match any aircraft he knew. Too fast for a plane, too controlled for a meteor. The lights changed direction suddenly, something no normal aircraft could do. At first, Mason thought the lack of water was making him see things, but the lights grew larger, coming closer. His heart raced. This was no rescue helicopter. This was something else. The object descended silently about 50 yards away. It was shaped like a smooth oval, its black surface seeming to swallow the light around it rather than reflect it. Mason estimated it was about the size of a small house. There were no visible engines or windows, just the smooth black surface, with faint lines that glowed with a soft blue light. Mason tried to stand up, but his broken leg gave way. He fell back against the rock, his breathing fast and shallow. Was this a secret military craft? Some kind of new drone? But if it was military, why would it land here? A section of the craft's side began to glow brighter. The solid surface seemed to melt away, forming a doorway filled with blue-white light. Mason shielded his eyes, waiting for whoever, or whatever, was inside to emerge. A tall figure stepped through the doorway. Even in the dim light, Mason could tell this was no human. The being stood at least 7 feet tall with a slender build. Its skin seemed to shift colors like the inside of a seashell, glowing faintly in the darkness. It had a generally human shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but the similarities ended there. The being's face had 2 large eyes that glowed a deep violet without any visible pupils. Where a human would have a nose, it had only slight ridges. Its mouth was small and seemed to have no lips. It had no visible hair, and its head was slightly larger and more oval than a human's. It wore what looked like a fitted uniform of deep blue material with symbols Mason didn't recognize glowing on the chest and arms. The being moved with unusual grace, as if the Earth's gravity was too weak for it. Mason tried to back away, but he was already pressed against the rock. The being approached him slowly, its head tilted slightly as if studying him. Mason's military training kicked in. He reached for his sidearm, but his holster was empty. The gun must have been lost in the crash. "Stay back," Mason warned, though he had no way to enforce the command. The being stopped a few feet away from him. Then, to Mason's shock, it spoke. "Your vital signs are fading," it said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move in sync with the words. The voice seemed to come from all around him rather than from the being itself. "I am Captain Alara of the Nexus Coalition. I can heal you, but you must come with me now." Mason stared in disbelief. An alien. An actual alien standing in front of him, speaking English. This couldn't be real. Maybe he was already dead, his brain creating strange visions as it shut down from dehydration. "Who? What are you?" Mason managed to ask. "There is no time to explain here," the being, Captain Alara, replied. "Your body is failing. The broken bone in your leg has damaged blood vessels. Internal bleeding has begun. You have approximately 42 of your minutes before the damage becomes irreversible. Mason looked down at his leg. The pain had actually lessened in the last hour, which he now realized was a bad sign. His medical training told him the alien was probably right. He was going into shock. "How do you know English?" Mason asked, his mind still struggling to accept what was happening. "We have studied your world for many cycles," Alara answered. "But that explanation can wait. Your time cannot. Will you accept my help?" Mason weighed his options. Stay here and almost certainly die, or go with this alien being to who knows where. It wasn't much of a choice. "Yes," he said finally. "I'll go with you." Captain Alara moved forward with surprising speed. Before Mason could react, the alien had lifted him as easily as if he weighed nothing. Alara's skin felt cool and smooth against Mason's, almost like polished stone but somehow alive. As Alara carried him toward the glowing doorway, Mason caught one last glimpse of the desert and the star-filled sky above. Whatever happened next, his life would never be the same. The thought should have terrified him, but instead he felt a strange sense of peace as they passed through the doorway into the ship. The last thing Mason saw before losing consciousness was the inside of the craft, walls that seemed both solid and flowing at the same time, covered with the same glowing blue patterns he had seen on the outside. Then darkness took him, the pain finally too much for his body to bear. But even as his consciousness faded, Mason felt something unexpected. A presence in his mind, gentle but alien, like a cool hand on a fevered brow. And somehow he knew it was her, Captain Alara, ensuring he would survive the journey to wherever they were going. Mason opened his eyes slowly. He was lying on what felt like a soft bed, but when he looked down he saw no sheets or mattress. Instead, he floated a few inches above a smooth platform that glowed with a soft blue light. The room around him had no sharp corners. The walls curved gently, shifting between deep blue and purple colors. Patterns of light moved across the surfaces like slow waves. Mason sat up suddenly, memories flooding back. The crash. The desert. The alien. To his surprise, he felt no pain. He looked down at his leg, the one that had been broken. He moved it, carefully, then more boldly. It worked perfectly. There wasn't even a bruise. He touched his face where cuts from the crash had been. His skin was smooth and unharmed. "You heal quickly," said a voice from behind him. Mason turned to see Captain Alara enter the room. In the better light, he could see her more clearly now. Her skin shifted colors subtly as she moved, like the inside of a pearl shell. Her eyes were large and deep violet with no visible pupils. Yet Mason could tell she was looking directly at him. "How long was I out?" Mason asked, finding his voice rough from disuse. "3 of your Earth days," Alara replied. Her mouth moved, this time as she spoke, but not exactly in sync with the words. It was as if he was hearing a perfect translation slightly ahead of her actual speech. "My leg. It was broken." "Yes. We repaired the bone, blood vessels, and surrounding tissue. The process is simple for us, though your body needed time to adjust to our methods." Mason swung his legs over the edge of the floating platform. He was still wearing his flight suit pants, but his torn jacket and shirt had been replaced with a simple black fitted top made of a material he didn't recognize. It felt like silk, but seemed to adjust to his body temperature. "Where am I?" he asked, looking around the strange room. "You are aboard the Starweaver, my ship," Alara explained. "We are currently in orbit around your planet." "In orbit? As in space?" Mason stood up quickly, feeling suddenly lightheaded. "Yes, though we maintain artificial gravity within the ship." Alara moved closer, studying him with what seemed like curiosity. "Most species experience more distress upon waking in an alien environment. You are adapting well." Mason took a deep breath. "Military training. Adapt and survive." He looked directly at Alara. "Why did you save me?" Alara was quiet for a moment, as if considering how much to tell him. "I was not supposed to make contact with any humans yet. My mission is observation only. But when I detected your crash and your life signs failing, she paused. It presented an ethical choice I could not ignore. A panel on the wall suddenly shifted, forming into what looked like a window. Mason gasped as he saw Earth below them, blue and green and wrapped in white clouds. It's beautiful, he whispered. Yes, Ilara agreed. Your world is quite remarkable in its diversity of life forms and ecosystems. It is one of the reasons the Coalition has been observing it for so long. The Coalition? You mentioned that before. The Nexus Coalition? Ilara gestured to the platform Mason had been lying on. Please sit. This explanation may take some time. As Mason sat back down, Ilara waved her hand, and the wall opposite them transformed into a display showing countless stars and planets. The Nexus Coalition is an alliance of 17 spacefaring civilizations from different star systems, she explained. My species, the Lumidari, were among the founding members. For over 10,000 of your years, we have explored, studied, and protected developing worlds. The display zoomed in on a planet that looked nothing like Earth, mostly purple with rings similar to Saturn's. This is my homeworld, Lumina, Ilara said with what Mason thought might be a hint of fondness. We evolved in a different environment than humans, but we share many basic traits with your species. We are curious. We seek knowledge. We form communities. Mason tried to process everything he was hearing. Aliens were real. They had been watching Earth. They had technology far beyond anything humans had created. Are you planning to invade? He asked, voicing his biggest fear. Ilara made a sound that might have been laughter. No. The Coalition does not conquer or invade. We observe, and when a species reaches a certain level of development, we make official contact and offer membership. Your world is still some time away from that point. Then why am I here? Why show me all this if humans aren't ready? Ilara's expression changed, becoming more serious. Because of what I discovered while healing you. She moved closer and sat beside him on the platform. Your neural patterns are unusual. Different from other humans we have studied. Different how? Your brain forms connections in ways that should not be possible for your species at its current evolutionary stage. When we connected you to our healing technology, your mind adapted to the interface almost instantly. This has never happened before with any human. Mason frowned. So I'm some kind of freak? No, Ilara said firmly. You are the result of something that happened long ago. The Forerunners, the first advanced species who formed the Coalition, visited Earth thousands of years before my kind joined. They left traces of themselves in your planet's early life forms. Most humans carry a small percentage of this genetic legacy. You carry significantly more. Before Mason could ask more questions, the door to the room opened and another alien entered. This one was slightly shorter than Ilara, with skin that leaned more toward blue tones. The newcomer wore a similar uniform, but with different symbols. Captain, we have detected unusual activity in Sector 7, the new alien said. Their voice translated just like Ilara's. Ilara stood quickly. This is Commander Lysandra, my second in command, she said to Mason. Then to Lysandra, what kind of activity? Energy signatures matching Krell scout vessels. 3 of them, moving through the outer system. Mason saw Ilara's expression darken. How close? They will reach lunar orbit in approximately 6 hours if they maintain current speed. Ilara turned to Mason. I need to go to the command center. You should rest more. Who are the Krell? Mason asked, standing up. Are they dangerous? Ilara and Lysandra exchanged looks that Mason couldn't read. The Krell are not part of the Coalition, Ilara said carefully. They are competitors. And yes, they can be very dangerous. I'm coming with you, Mason said firmly. If Earth is in danger, I need to know. Lysandra stepped forward. Captain, bringing the human aboard was already against protocol, including him in Coalition security matters is necessary, Ilara interrupted. His neural patterns give us an unexpected advantage we may need if the Krell are truly here. She turned to Mason. Very well. Come with us. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Mason tried to take in everything he saw. The walls seemed almost alive, responding to the presence of the crew members who passed by. Other Lumidari they encountered gave Mason curious looks but did not approach. "How many crew on this ship?" Mason asked. 22, Ilara answered. "The Starweaver is a reconnaissance vessel, not a warship." "And how many on a warship?" Mason asked, feeling a chill at the thought of alien conflicts above Earth. "Several thousand," Lysandra said from behind him. They entered a large circular room with a central platform surrounded by control stations. Above the platform floated a three-dimensional image of Earth's solar system. Mason could see their ship's position near Earth and, at the far edge of the display, 3 red dots moving slowly inward. "The Krell vessels," Ilara explained, pointing to the red dots. "What do they want?" Mason asked. Ilara's violet eyes met his. "Most likely they want Earth. And if they reach it before we can stop them, your world will face a threat it cannot possibly understand or fight." The command center buzzed with activity as the Lumidari crew prepared for the approaching Krell ships. Mason stood beside Ilara, watching as the 3D map showed the red dots moving steadily closer to Earth. "Tell me about the Krell," Mason said. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Ilara touched the central platform and the display changed to show a different type of ship. Unlike the smooth, organic lines of the Starweaver, this vessel was angular and threatening, covered with what looked like weapons. "The Krell are predators," Ilara explained. "They move from system to system taking whatever they want, resources, technology, even living specimens for study and experimentation. They're not interested in peaceful contact? No. They see other species as either useful or useless. Nothing more." Ilara's voice hardened. "We have been in conflict with them for centuries, though most of it happens far from developing worlds like yours." Lysandra approached them, holding what looked like a small crystal. "Captain, we've confirmed it's definitely the Krell. Their energy signatures match previous encounters." "Have they detected us?" Ilara asked. "We don't believe so. Our cloaking systems are still functioning at optimal levels." Mason looked back at the map. "Why would they come to Earth now? What's changed?" Ilara and Lysandra exchanged glances before Ilara answered. "They may have followed us. My mission to observe Earth was meant to be brief and undetectable, but when I rescued you..." She trailed off. "You're saying this is my fault?" Mason felt a knot forming in his stomach. "No," Ilara said quickly. "The Krell have been probing this system for years. It was only a matter of time before they came in force. Your rescue may have accelerated their timeline, but they were already aware of Earth." Another Lumidari officer approached, this one with skin that shifted toward green tones. "Captain, we've analyzed their approach vector. They appear to be heading directly for the third planet's moon." "They're establishing a base," Lysandra said grimly. "Standard Krell tactics. Set up on a nearby moon or asteroid, then launch the main invasion." Mason felt his heart racing. An alien invasion. It sounded like something from a movie, not real life. Yet here he was, standing on an alien ship, watching it unfold. "We need to warn Earth," he said urgently. "The military needs to prepare. Your world's weapons would be useless against Krell technology," Lysandra said, not unkindly, "and the panic such a warning would cause might do more harm than good." "Then what do we do?" Mason asked, looking from Lysandra to Ilara. "We can't just let them invade." Ilara was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider their options. "We are too few to engage them directly. We need to call for coalition reinforcements." "How long would that take?" Mason asked. "The nearest coalition fleet is 3 days away at maximum speed," Lysandra said. Mason looked back at the map. "And how long until the Krell reach the moon?" "Less than 6 hours now." The weight of the situation settled on Mason's shoulders. His planet, everyone he knew, everything he had ever cared about. All of it was in danger, and there seemed to be nothing he could do. Then Ilara spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "There might be another option. The Nexus key. Lysandra's head snapped up. Captain, no, it's too dangerous. No one has successfully activated it at full capacity for millennia. What's the Nexus key? Mason asked. Ilara gestured for him to follow her to a smaller room off the main command center. Inside was a pedestal supporting what looked like a crystal similar to the one Lysandra had been holding, but much larger and more complex. This is a fragment of Forerunner technology, Ilara explained. The Nexus key. In theory, it can generate a defensive shield powerful enough to protect an entire planetary system. In theory? Mason asked. It hasn't been successfully used at full power since the time of the Forerunners, Lysandra said from the doorway. Every attempt has failed, some catastrophically. What does catastrophically mean? Mason asked. The last attempt resulted in the destruction of an entire moon, Lysandra said flatly. The backlash of energy killed everyone involved in the activation. Mason swallowed hard. So why consider it now? Ilara placed her hand near the crystal without touching it. Because of you, Mason. Your neural patterns, the Forerunner genetics you carry, they might allow you to interface with the key in a way none of us can. You want me to try to activate this thing? Mason stared at the crystal with new wariness. It's a risk, Ilara admitted, but it may be our only chance to protect your world until reinforcements arrive. Mason took a deep breath. What would I have to do? Your mind would temporarily connect with the ship's systems through the key, Ilara explained. You would need to find the activation pathway, a mental pattern that unlocks the key's full potential. And if I fail, the feedback could damage your mind, Lysandra said bluntly. Or worse. Mason looked back at the crystal. It seemed to pulse slightly, as if alive. And if I do nothing? Then we evacuate as many humans as we can fit on this ship, no more than a few dozen, and leave before the Krell arrive, Ilara said softly. Everyone else would be at the Krell's mercy. The choice seemed impossible. Risk his mind, possibly his life, on alien technology he didn't understand, or abandon his planet to invaders. I'll do it, Mason said finally. Tell me what I need to do. Ilara nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. We'll need to prepare you. The interface is not designed for human minds. They returned to the command center where Ilara gave orders to prepare for the Nexus key activation. Mason watched as the crew moved with practiced efficiency, though he could sense their unease. Why does Lysandra seem so against this plan? Mason asked quietly as they worked. Because she cares about this crew, Ilara replied. And about me. The captain must remain connected to guide the process. If something goes wrong. She didn't finish the sentence. Mason realized that Ilara was risking her life alongside his. You don't have to do this, it's my planet, my responsibility. Ilara's expression softened. You wouldn't survive the process without guidance, and I am responsible for bringing you into this situation. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. We will face this together. An hour later, Mason sat in what Ilara called a neural interface chair. It adapted to his body as he sat down, feeling almost like it was embracing him. The Nexus key had been moved to a stand directly in front of him. Ilara sat in a similar chair to his right. The other Lumidari crew members stood at a safe distance, monitoring equipment that Mason couldn't begin to understand. Lysandra approached them one last time. The Krell ships have accelerated, she reported. They will reach the moon in less than 3 hours. Then we must begin, Ilara said. She turned to Mason. Are you ready? Mason nodded, his mouth too dry to speak. When the process starts, you will feel disoriented, Ilara warned. Your mind will expand beyond your body. Don't fight it. Look for me in that expanded space. I will guide you toward the activation pathway. Mason took a deep breath and gripped the arms of the chair. Let's do this. Ilara nodded to Lysandra, who activated something on her control panel. The Nexus key began to glow brighter, pulsing with a rhythm that somehow matched Mason's heartbeat. Thin filaments extended from the chair, connecting to Mason's temples with a touch so light he barely felt it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded. Mason felt as if he was falling through endless space. His consciousness stretched and expanded until he could perceive the entire ship, then Earth, then the whole solar system, as if it were a model he could hold in his hands. He sensed the Krell ships as dark intrusions in this harmonious system, predatory consciousnesses driven by hunger and conquest. He could feel their intent, their cold calculation as they approached, unaware they were being watched. Behind him, like a bright star, he sensed Ilara's presence. "Follow me," her thoughts seemed to say, though he heard no words. This way. Mason allowed his expanded consciousness to follow Ilara's guidance, moving through layers of reality he had never known existed. Around them, the fabric of space itself seemed to pulse with energy and potential. At the core of it all waited the Nexus key, not the physical crystal he had seen, but its true form in this mental space, a geometric pattern of such complexity that Mason's mind struggled to comprehend it. This is it. Ilara's thoughts reached him. The activation pathway is hidden within the pattern. We must find it together. As they approached the key's mental projection, Mason felt a sudden resistance, not from the key itself, but from somewhere else. Dark thoughts crashed against his consciousness like waves, fear, doubt, images of failure and destruction. The Krell, Ilara's presence warned. They sense our attempt. They're trying to stop us. Mason pushed back against the dark thoughts, focusing on Ilara's presence and the pattern of the key before them. As he concentrated, he began to see something. Within the geometric complexity, a pathway, a sequence, a code written in light and energy. It felt familiar somehow, as if he had known it all his life but had forgotten until this moment. The Forerunner genetics in his DNA recognized their creator's work, responding to patterns encoded millions of years ago. With Ilara's guidance, Mason reached for the pathway, his expanded mind tracing the complex sequence. The Krell's psychic assault intensified, filling his consciousness with visions of Earth burning, of everyone he loved suffering, of failure and extinction. The hours after activating the Nexus key passed in a blur for Mason. His body felt drained, his mind fuzzy from the intense experience. The Lumidary medical team helped him back to his room, where he slept deeply for nearly 12 hours. When Mason finally woke, Ilara was sitting beside his bed studying data on a floating screen that disappeared when she noticed he was awake. "How do you feel?" she asked. Mason sat up slowly, taking stock of his body. To his surprise, he felt good, better than good. His mind seemed clearer than it had ever been, and his body hummed with energy. "I feel different," he said. "Stronger, somehow." Ilara nodded. "The connection with the Nexus key has changed you. Your neural pathways have been enhanced. It's a side effect we didn't anticipate." "Is that bad?" "No, but it is permanent." Ilara's expression was hard to read. "Your mind is now partially linked to this ship's systems. You can probably sense it even now, can't you?" Mason closed his eyes and concentrated. She was right. At the edge of his awareness, he could feel the Starweaver, its systems, its energy flow, even the presence of its crew moving throughout the vessel. "That's incredible," he whispered. "It's unprecedented," Ilara corrected. "No human has ever formed such a bond with Coalition technology." Mason opened his eyes. "The shield, did it hold? Are the Krell stopped?" "Yes," Ilara said, and Mason could hear the relief in her voice. "The Nexus field has them trapped in a temporal stasis. They're frozen in time, not dead, but unable to move or communicate. When the Coalition fleet arrives, they'll be contained properly. And Earth is safe? For now." Ilara stood and walked to the window-like panel that showed Earth below. "But this incident will force the Coalition to reconsider its timeline for contact with your world. The Krell now know that Earth has something they want." "Which is what exactly?" Mason asked. Ilara turned back to him. "You, or more precisely, what you represent. Humans with enhanced Forerunner genetic markers. The Krell have been searching for Forerunner legacies for centuries. To them, your species represents a treasure trove of genetic potential." Mason joined her at the window, watching his home planet spin slowly below them. From here, there were no borders, no nations, just one world, beautiful and fragile. What happens now? He asked. The Coalition Council will meet to discuss the situation. They'll want to speak with you directly. Me? Why? You've done something no one has done since the Forerunners themselves. Fully activated a Nexus key. That makes you significant. Ilara hesitated, then added, "It also means you have choices to make." Before Mason could ask what she meant, the door opened and Lysandra entered. The commander looked at Mason with new respect in her eyes. "The Coalition fleet has arrived," she reported. "Admiral Terran requests permission to come aboard." Ilara nodded. "Prepare the reception bay. We'll meet them there." She turned to Mason. "Would you like to join us? The Admiral will want to meet you." Mason looked down at his simple black clothing. "I'm not exactly dressed for meeting admirals." To his surprise, both Ilara and Lysandra made the sound he now recognized as Lumidari laughter. "I think we can fix that," Ilara said. An hour later, Mason stood in the Star Weaver's reception bay wearing what Ilara had called appropriate attire for a Coalition representative. The outfit was similar to the Lumidari uniforms, but with subtle differences that marked him as not one of them. The material adjusted to his body temperature and movement in a way that made Earth clothing seem primitive by comparison. The reception bay doors opened, and 3 Lumidari entered. 2 were clearly guards, wearing armor that seemed to flow around their bodies like liquid metal. Between them walked a taller Lumidari, with skin that shifted toward golden tones. The symbols on their uniform were more elaborate than Ilara's. "Admiral Terran?" Ilara greeted them with a slight bow. "Thank you for responding so quickly to our distress call." "Captain Ilara." The Admiral's voice was deeper than Ilara's. "Your message mentioned Krell activity and a successful Nexus key activation. Both seemed unlikely." The Admiral's gaze shifted to Mason, studying him with open curiosity. "This is the human?" "This is Lieutenant Mason Hayes," Ilara said formally. "He was instrumental in activating the Nexus key and saving this system from Krell invasion." Admiral Terran approached Mason, their golden-hued skin shimmering under the bay's lights. "Remarkable. Our scientists will want to study how this was possible." Something in the Admiral's tone made Mason uncomfortable. "I'm not a lab specimen," he said firmly. The Admiral's expression shifted to what might have been surprise. "Of course not. You would be an honored guest of the Coalition." "Admiral," Ilara interrupted, "perhaps we should discuss the Krell vessels, currently in stasis near this planet's moon." "Yes." The Admiral turned away from Mason. "My science team is examining them now. The temporal stasis field is unlike anything we've seen before. It appears to be holding stable, but we should transfer the Krell to containment vessels as soon as possible." The 4 of them moved to a conference room where the Admiral was shown the full data from the Krell encounter and the Nexus key activation. Mason watched as the Lumidari discussed technical details that went far beyond his understanding, despite his enhanced mental connection to the ship. After what seemed like hours of discussion, Admiral Terran turned to Mason again. "Lieutenant Hayes, the Coalition Council will want to meet with you. Would you be willing to travel to Coalition headquarters?" Mason looked at Ilara, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. "Where exactly is Coalition headquarters?" "The system you would call Tau Ceti," the Admiral replied. "About 12 light years from Earth." 12 light years? Mason repeated. "How long would the journey take?" "Approximately 3 of your Earth days at standard speed." Mason struggled to process this. 3 days to travel 12 light years. The technology these beings possessed was beyond anything humans had imagined possible. "What about Earth?" he asked. "I can't just disappear. People will be looking for me." "We've considered that," Ilara said. "We can return you to Earth briefly to make arrangements. Your military believes you are still missing after your crash. We can help you create a cover story for a temporary absence." "And then what?" Mason asked. "After I meet this council, do I just come back to Earth and pretend none of this happened?" The room fell silent. Admiral Terran and Lysandra exchanged glances. That is one option, Ilara said carefully. You could return to your previous life, with modifications to ensure your enhanced neural capabilities don't raise questions. But there are other options? Mason pressed. Yes. Ilara met his eyes directly. The Coalition could use someone with your unique abilities. You could serve as Earth's first unofficial representative, helping prepare your world for eventual first contact, which would be when? Admiral Terran answered. Originally, the timeline was set for approximately 200 of your years. Given recent events, that may be accelerated significantly. Mason's mind raced with the implications. Become an ambassador? To an alien coalition? Travel between the stars? Leave behind everything and everyone he knew? I need time to think, he said finally. Of course, Ilara said. We'll return to Earth orbit. You can take a shuttle to the surface and have 3 days to make your decision. 3 days to decide the course of his entire life, and possibly the future relationship between Earth and the Coalition. The return to Earth was surreal. Mason sat in a small shuttle piloted by Ilara herself, watching as they entered the atmosphere above the Nevada desert not far from where he had crashed. It was early morning, the sun just rising over the mountains. The shuttle's cloaking system will keep us hidden from your world's detection systems, Ilara explained as they descended. We'll land near the town you indicated. Mason nodded, his throat tight with emotion at seeing his home planet up close again. Despite everything he had experienced, part of him had feared he might never return. They landed in a secluded area outside the small town where Mason had an apartment. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper of sound, its advanced technology making Earth's best aircraft seem noisy and primitive by comparison. I'll wait here, Ilara said as the door opened. The shuttle will remain cloaked. Return when you've made your arrangements and your decision. Mason stepped out onto Earth soil, feeling the familiar gravity and smelling the desert air. He turned back to Ilara. Thank you for everything. She nodded, her violet eyes meeting his. 3 days, Mason. Choose wisely. The walk into town gave Mason time to organize his thoughts. The cover story they had created was simple. He had ejected from his aircraft before it crashed, landed in a remote area, and had been making his way back with an injury that slowed his progress. Now he needed personal leave to recover from the ordeal. His apartment was exactly as he had left it 3 weeks ago, small, sparsely furnished with the organized neatness of a military man. It felt strange to be surrounded by such ordinary things after what he had experienced. Mason called his commanding officer first, explaining his miraculous survival and requesting immediate leave, which was granted without question. Next, he called his sister Karen, the only family he had left after their parents died years ago. Mason, she cried when she heard his voice. They said your plane went down, that you were missing. I'm okay, he assured her. It's a long story. Can you come visit? 6 months passed like a dream for Mason. The journey to Coalition headquarters had been his first experience with interstellar travel, a strange sensation of the universe folding around the ship before unfolding again at their destination. The Luminary called it slip space, and explained that it wasn't truly faster than light travel, but rather a way of temporarily bending space to connect 2 distant points. The Tau Ceti system was breathtaking. 7 planets orbited the sun-like star, but it was the 4th world, Nexus Prime, that served as Coalition headquarters. Unlike Earth, Nexus Prime had 3 small moons and rings similar to Saturn's, giving the blue-green planet a majestic appearance. The Coalition Council had received Mason with great interest. Composed of representatives from 17 different species, the council chamber had been overwhelming at first. Some of the aliens looked somewhat humanoid like the Luminary, while others were so different that Mason struggled to understand how they communicated or even thought. After days of questions, tests, and discussions, the council had made their decision. Mason would indeed serve as Earth's unofficial representative, helping prepare his world gradually for eventual first contact. He would split his time between Earth and Coalition space, observing both cultures and building bridges of understanding. Now, 6 months later, Mason stood on the observation deck of the Starweaver, watching Earth grow larger as they approached. This would be his third visit home since joining the coalition. Each time he returned with carefully selected information to seed among Earth's scientific community. Nothing that would cause dramatic changes, but subtle advances that would help prepare humanity for the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. Ready for another homecoming? Ilara's voice came from behind him. Mason turned and smiled. Over the months, his relationship with the Luminary captain had evolved from rescuer and rescued to colleagues, then friends, and finally to something deeper, something neither human nor Luminary language had quite the right words to describe. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied. It gets easier each time seeing Earth as just one world among many, but it's still strange to walk among people who have no idea what's out here. Ilara moved to stand beside him at the viewport. Her opalescent skin caught the light of distant stars, shifting through subtle colors that Mason had learned to read as indicators of her mood. Right now, the bluish tint suggested she was thoughtful, perhaps concerned. The council received new reports from the observation posts, she said. The Krell activity near the Arcturus system has increased. They may be planning something. Mason frowned. Since the incident at Earth, the Krell had been unusually quiet. The 3 scout ships caught in the Nexus field had been contained and their crews placed in stasis. But everyone knew the Krell would eventually respond to the loss of their vessels. Do they think Earth is still a target? He asked. Possibly. The genetic markers you carry may be present in others on your world. To the Krell, that makes Earth valuable. Ilara turned to face him directly. The Council is considering accelerating the contact timeline, 50 years rather than the originally planned 200. 50 years, Mason repeated. The number hung in the air between them, its implication clear. I won't live to see it. Humans typically lived 80-90 years now. Mason was 32. In 50 years, he would be 82 if he was lucky enough to live that long. Ilara's expression softened. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. She held out her hand, revealing a small crystal similar to the Nexus key but on a much smaller scale. This contains the genetic modifications that give my people our extended lifespan. With it, you could live to see Earth join the coalition and beyond. Mason stared at the crystal. You can do that? Extend human life? The procedure is complex, but safe, Ilara explained. The modifications would build on the changes already begun by your connection to the Nexus key. Your natural lifespan would extend to approximately 300 of your years, with significantly slowed aging after physical maturity. What's the catch? Mason asked, sensing there must be more to it. The modifications would further enhance your connection to our technology. You would become even less fully human than you already are, she explained candidly. And your life would increasingly be tied to this ship. And to me. What do you mean, tied to you? Ilara seemed to choose her words carefully. The process creates a form of neural resonance between the recipient and those who administer the modifications. It's not telepathy exactly, but a deep awareness of each other's presence and well-being. Among my people, it's usually only done between lifelong companions. Like marriage? Mason asked, trying to understand. Similar in some ways, though more permanent than what humans typically experience. The bond cannot be broken once formed. Mason looked from the crystal to Ilara. In the 6 months they had been together, his feelings for her had grown into something he had never experienced with another human. Despite their differences, physical, cultural, evolutionary, they understood each other in ways that transcended words. Is this what you want? He asked softly. To be bound to me that way? Ilara's skin shifted to the warm rose tone that Mason had come to associate with her deepest emotions. I would not offer if it were not my wish, but the choice must be yours, freely made and fully understood. Mason looked out at Earth growing larger in the viewport. Somewhere down there was his sister, his friends, the life he had known. Yet when he thought about his future, he couldn't imagine it without Ilara and the stars they had explored together. I already made my choice the day you saved me in that desert, he said, taking the crystal from her hand. My place is here now, between worlds, with you. The procedure took place the next day in the Star Weaver's medical bay. Mason lay on the same platform where he had first awakened after his rescue, now understanding that it was not just a bed, but a sophisticated medical device capable of rewriting his very DNA. Ilara and the ship's medical officer, a Lumidari named Varian, worked together to prepare the crystal and the equipment. The crystal was placed in a receptacle above Mason's chest, where it began to pulse with a soft light that matched his heartbeat. The process will take approximately 6 hours, Varian explained. You will be in a sleep-like state, but your mind will remain partially aware. Ilara will guide you through the neural aspects while I monitor the physical changes. Mason nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. He looked at Ilara, who stood beside him. I'll be with you the entire time, she promised, placing her hand over his. As the platform activated and the crystal's light intensified, Mason felt himself slipping into a dreamlike state. His consciousness expanded in a way similar to his experience with the Nexus key, but gentler, more controlled. In this expanded awareness, he sensed Ilara's presence more clearly than ever before. Her mind touched his, not with words, but with impressions, emotions, and memories. He saw glimpses of her homeworld, her childhood, her years of training and exploration among the stars. In return, he shared his own memories, growing up with his sister after their parents died, his decision to join the military, the loneliness he had often felt even among other humans. As the hours passed, Mason felt his body changing at the cellular level. The process wasn't painful, but he could sense the profound transformation taking place. His awareness of the ship grew stronger, more detailed. He could feel every system, every crew member moving through its corridors. Most powerfully, he felt his connection to Ilara deepening, becoming something unbreakable. Her presence in his mind was like a warm light, distinct from his own consciousness yet harmoniously intertwined with it. When Mason finally opened his eyes, the medical bay looked different. He could see subtle energy patterns in the air, flow, lines in the walls that had been invisible before. His hearing detected sounds beyond the normal human range, and his sense of touch seemed heightened, aware of the slightest changes in temperature and pressure. How do you feel? Ilara asked, still holding his hand. Mason sat up slowly, expecting to feel weak or disoriented. Instead, he felt stronger and more alert than ever before. Amazing, he said truthfully. Everything is so clear. Varian checked. Readings on a floating display. The integration is complete and stable. All modifications have taken hold successfully. The medical officer nodded to Ilara. I'll leave you two to adjust to the bond. After Varian left, Mason stood and walked to a mirror-like panel on the wall. His appearance hadn't changed dramatically. He was still recognizably himself, but there was a subtle difference in his eyes. They seemed deeper somehow, with tiny flecks of violet similar to Ilara's eye color. The physical changes will be minimal, Ilara explained, coming to stand beside him. Most of the modifications are internal, enhanced cellular regeneration, optimized neural pathways, improved sensory processing. Mason turned to face her. And the bond? I can feel you. Here. He touched his temple. Ilara nodded. And I feel you. The connection will grow stronger over time as our neural patterns continue to harmonize. Is this how your people usually form relationships? Mason asked. Only the most committed ones. The bond is rare even among my kind. Ilara's skin shifted to the rose tone he now recognized as affection.